So, welcome everybody to the Inside Out podcast. I'm Michelle, a life designer coach, nutritional therapist, leader in run fitness, health enthusiast, mum of two, entrepreneur, and the host of this wonderful podcast. Through this podcast, I bring wisdom and experiences from inspirational people, holistic well-being partners, and from within my own life journey because I truly want to unravel complexities and support you around the globe to elevate your health and well-being. Together, we can open opportunities to live the life you want to live and feel empowered to fly to great heights to achieve your dreams. This week, we're talking to Kerry Trevett. Kerry has over 20 years in education, teaching, coaching, leading, and managing small teams. Through her experience, Kerry became a passionate mindset and purpose coach, supporting for professionals to beat burnout and prioritize their wellness. So, without further ado, can we all put our hands together and welcome Kerry to our podcast? Hello, Kerry.
Oh,
So
thank you
excited
very
that you're
much.
here.
I know, thank you very much. This is exciting, isn't it? We've had a brief chat beforehand, and we've obviously connected through the running club, which is one of our healthy habits, because ultimately, as you quite kindly just said, I have been on a journey of my own wellness to therefore now coach other people to create healthier habits, because that essentially is what we have to do, because everything's changed over the last 4 years. Really, our whole worlds have changed and it's become much more fast paced, hasn't it? So with change, we have to also then pivot and adapt our lifestyles, because as we were just talking about, burnout is in our lifestyle at the moment, and 1 in 5 people are unfortunately showing symptoms of that. Now, you were talking to me about that you've had a lot of different challenges through the last few weeks, and you're not sure whether you are potentially having symptoms of burnout. So, what is it you're feeling at the moment? What is it what are your symptoms to describe how you're feeling?
Thank you. I think it's quite ironic because obviously, as you know, I'm a life nutritional coach. And so this is probably what you should be, or what I would do with my own clients. So this is quite interesting. So what am I experiencing? So just for the listeners that may be new to the podcast, recently my mother died suddenly. So that's coming up to 2 months ago. In between all that, life challenges of obviously a numerous amounts of other people died all at the same time. So that was quite, oh, right, okay, how do you do that? Then I've got one son who suffers with pyrrole disorder, but is still very, his stomach is intoxicated. So we're trying to work out, well, where's that coming through? What supplements? Which then leads for him to be very much, you don't know what wavelength he's going to be on. Is he going to be calm? Is he not? My other son has made some wrong choices educationally, so that we're finding challenging. And obviously, on top of all of that, my dogs had an operation, finally recovering, and I'm training for a marathon in June. My husband is training for a full Ironman. And then I've just gone back to like my corporate job, which is something that I'm not passionate about, but I know that I'm serving others and I help support them. So, I come from a great place of being of service for people. So, what are my symptoms? Sometimes, obviously, I know diet is healthy. So I do follow a diet, but whether or not I'm lacking in something, I don't know.
Mm.
My body just aches. I strongly just sometimes feel this whole desire just to go, I can't do this anymore. I really just want to sit down and cry. Sometimes, I do allow those feelings to come, which is the healthy way to do that. Other times it's just like, well, it's not appropriate because you're in the middle of Tesco's, um, or
Do it,
you
just do it.
you just really, and then I have to go for a sleep. But again, I'm one of these, I think I should be living in a Mediterranean country where they have siestas, because an afternoon nap, I find that I'm very much more productive. So with all of that, and obviously juggling, podcasting and my coaching business, I just have this severe sense of, if somebody says something and pushes me too far, I generally think I am going to just sit down and break down, and that's me done. And I've just, obviously had a period of time off.
because of the grieving process.
Mm.
So, well, as you know, there is no time limit on that. And unfortunately, I do feel that, particularly in this country as well, that there is this rush to get back to whatever is acceptable from society. And actually, there is no time gap on that. You can't just go, oh, actually, I should be okay now, because you're going to go through the process of it. And, I don't need to teach you how to suck eggs. You are a coach as well. And ultimately, you and I always coach ourselves, but I do think it's helpful, really helpful and healthy to have, like we are building, and already have other connections and communities of other coaches to hold each other up with regards to support and accountability, because it really, really helps. Because a lot of the time, coaches like you and I, you are working in isolation because you're supporting other people. So where you want to support other people's wellness, in that aspect, you'll then potentially not focus on your own. So there's an awful lot of information that I would say that we need to sort of strip back, because you've got a very busy life, and a lot of people do. So what I would therefore focus on is you as the priority. You are always the priority, and you obviously know that from your health and nutrition, and the lifestyle coaching that you teach others. But you cannot obviously pour from an empty cup. So something has to give, and therefore what you have to now look at, and what I would suggest doing, is how can you change your strategies to your family life? Because ultimately you've got a lot of different people to juggle. And how many plates can you spin? Because, evidently people, yourself, and we're talking about yourself at the moment, are spinning. And we're not clowns, we're not jugglers. You can only potentially you can only do one thing at a time. And unfortunately, we've got so much access to technology, this, that, that's another aspect. So these healthy habits there's so many ways, and it's a program. I essentially teach people with a 12-week program. It's not something that happens like immediately. I've practiced it for a long time, and it essentially works. So what you need to do first and foremost is really have a sit back. And what I suggest doing is I journal in the morning to set my goals, and then I journal in the evening to reflect on my day, because every day there's something I need to learn from, and something I can do better the next day. So with regards to you looking at the reasons of burnout, you've got to look at how your day is structured, because it's routine, isn't it? It's consistency. Like I said to you before, my 3 core pillars are consistency, communication, and connection. And as I said, when you're consistently communicating, you'll always be connected. And unfortunately, where we're all rushing around and things aren't as clear and structured, where you can make changes, we're not as connected. So therefore, there's this mismatch of, oh my goodness, you're on complete catch up, and you don't know whether you need to say to that person, teach yourself, whether you need to go and have a cry in Tesco's. There's quite a lot of different habits to now create. So as I said,
Just before we dive in, some of the symptoms, because I know you work with a lot of I would say high corporate professionals. Are there some of the symptoms that I've described? Do you see that quite regularly in high corporate professionals?
yeah,
And
yeah,
and
absolutely.
is that, again, like mine obviously is a lot of life challenges, but is some of those symptoms that you've seen within your other clients caused by more professionalism, or similarly this power struggle that you have in your mind between your job and your purpose, and your sort of like the challenges, the life challenges, and that family connection and connection to yourself?
I think that's a really good question. It's varied. It's really varied because everything to each person is a different stress level, isn't it? It can be, I would say, with regards to the professional people that I, support and coach, it can be because of their high levels of stress because of their jobs, because of the deadlines they're meant to be, meeting, the family life they've got to juggle. But I think, to be honest with you, I think it's just genuinely, it is an aspect of life is so busy, has become much faster, irrelevant to who or how, whether they're a CEO or, whatever their title is. I definitely would say it's to do with the fact that we are juggling clients that I speak to, people I speak to, are juggling far too much. So it's a sense of overwhelm from everything and not knowing, I would say, that's what their purpose is. That's where the issues are. It's not knowing what their purpose is and what their why is anymore. What the purpose is. Why am I doing that? And when you are very clear on what your goals are, so what the goal, what are you going to achieve, and what is the purpose, what's given you, and you quite rightly said earlier, your passion. You're not passionate about your corporate job. You're not. So that makes that very difficult to get up because you heard of the Ikigai approach, haven't you?
Yes, love the Ikigai.
I use that. I utilize that. I utilize the Ikigai approach all the time when I'm speaking to people because ultimately, if you don't have your purpose, why are you getting out of bed in the morning? What is the reason? Because it's a struggle, isn't it? You get up and you think, oh my gosh, I've got another day. There's another day of what am I going to do next? And it's a whole process of, you know, of, as I said to you before, when we go into the deep dive, that you have to have your goals set in place, your intentions set from the very beginning when you first wake up. And that goal, that longer term goal from the 12-week program that I teach people, that for instance, you are a marathon runner. It's the same process. You know exactly where you want to get to. How are you going to get there? And that's it. That's ultimately it. And it's stripping that all back. So you know that you've got this is the starting point. So you're running from the starting point and you need to get to the finish. But what's the process of you getting to that point? Now it's a whole mind game, isn't it? It's a complete mind game. And I'd say 90% of everything that we do, whether it's with regards to holding up that performance within your running or the performance within leadership or whatever role in corporate you might be doing, it's essentially knowing that you have the techniques and skills in place to deal with life's pressures. Because when you have worked on yourself as a holistic approach with the Ikigai purpose and that concept, you will then be able to then deal with and cope with life's challenges because life will always be challenging. There's nothing we can do about that. It's completely out of our hands, totally out of our hands. So when it's learning about letting go of things that are out of your control, you have to understand that there are things that we just cannot change, but what we can do is change how we react to it. So it's a whole different mode, a whole different way of looking at how to approach each angle that happens to you throughout the day. So I continuously, show people how to look at what their passion is. You've got to get that first of all. So for you, what is it that you want to achieve? What's your main goal, your dream that you really want to do?
My dream is to increase my coaching business and to do that online. Ideally to continue with the podcast. For some unknown reason, I absolutely loved sharing the information and draw out complexities and put it into a package. But I think more sort of spiritually, because my children have been medically challenging, and I think, when you've seen and you've done as much as my journey has been from abusive childhood all the way through, it's very much I'd like to have that peace, that safe, and that calmness. And it's quite interesting because for many years myself, and probably you can relate to this, is that when you say life's busy, it's how many of your clients, because I know a lot of mine, when they come, is that they're busy trying to be what social media presents you to be. And obviously, in the times of lockdown, it was great because you seem to have like less of that, an advert on a bus stop, or, your phone, or, constant bombardment. And so, I mean, I've been through that journey and I did hit rock bottom. It's just, I think, how do you help, or obviously, first of all, is what's your purpose? I've told you my purpose, but then it's trying to establish the values of well, what's mainly important, and how and what strategies you can share, and you shared with your professionalism about how to drown out the noise, I think, because I just find sometimes it is too noisy.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. As I said, with regards to my teaching programs, my coaching programs, they are over a 12-week period, but there are so many different strategies you can put into place, like you said, with regards to drowning out the noise. And I teach yoga and breath work and meditation as well, because I practice what I preach. I have to do that. I could never give someone value unless I do that myself. And so therefore, learning to stop and pause and breathe is essential. I've been in many scenarios when I was teaching or when I was in events, all these things, and things are happening so fast, and you can't stop other people from reacting or for projecting. You can't stop that. But what you can do is essentially control, as I said before, how you react to something. So it's a lot of, learning to breathe when you're in that moment, because people are firing stuff at you. Your brain is full of information. You'll think to yourself, right, I've got to get home to the children later. I've got to do this. I've got to go for a run. My husband's doing this, and your brain is whirring. It's learning to train your mind to slow down. And the only way that you can teach yourself to do that is from consistency, from practice, constant approach to continuously learn how to train your mind to unwind. It's being kind to your mind. So, ultimately, you and I are talking now. You can't tell I'm doing it, but it's just those slow breaths with, just deep breathing. And you can't see that I'm doing it, but I'm doing it. And it's essentially, therefore, teaches you how to slow down your thought process and focus on what's happening around you. Well, a lot of things I would do, I would say to someone, I've given them information, and a lot of what I teach is also about being an effective communicator. It's one of my strengths. I'm really good at communicating. I'm very good at processing. I'm a good problem solver. And ultimately, when you've given someone a task or communicated a want or a need, I always get people to repeat it back to me so that I'm aware that, one, I've articulated myself well, and two, they've understood, because otherwise we're just firing information at each other. And actually, have we both processed and got the right information? And that will apply to all walks of your life. That will apply with your coaching, that will apply with your children, your corporate, your professional. It's all these techniques that I teach are ultimately going to be effective with every step of people's different lifestyles. Because, as I said to you, communication is key. And if you don't have that, it's also communication and connection with yourself, because you have to communicate. You're going to communicate with yourself every single day. That narrative in your mind has to be on point, because otherwise then you start worrying, and therefore then you start going down the negative narrative, telling yourself you are this X, Y, and Z. Ultimately, whatever you tell yourself, you're going to be. I could sit here now and say, I feel really tired. I feel absolutely exhausted. And then I'll start going, I feel really tired. So ultimately it's a process of developing healthier techniques to be able to manage your mindset and, as you said, slow down those thought processes, because then everything becomes much more clearer and more focused. Because once you've learned how to manage your breath and to look at things in a different light, things don't feel so overwhelming. Like yourself, just to give a bit of background, I have 2 children. One's slightly older. I've had a very busy life. My background, with regards to yours, was very traumatic, but incredibly traumatic. And those obstacles that I learned to overcome was because I knew there was always a better way. There was always a better way of being able to be an effective communicator, as I said, learning how to have stronger relationships. I don't just mean with your professionalism, or your professional lifestyle, it's with your family, it's with your friends, it's with your partners. Everything we do will have the same process, just in a different way, because, as I said, using the techniques of the breath work, as I said, also to be able to minimize your day. I think you and I said it before, it's having a 3-in-1 approach. So I have 3 different aspects to my life. Okay, so I have myself. I'm important. It took me a long time to realize that actually I'm really important. And if I'm not on my A game, then my son won't be, my business won't, my friendships won't, connections, family, relationships, none of these things will work, because I have to be in my best shape mentally and physically. And as you know, I train, started running, completed my half marathon the other day. And that's a new part of my wellness journey. And it's a continuous approach. It's a constant. Sometimes you might feel like this, you might want to give up. But the giving up is not giving up, it's pivot. Sometimes you don't want to go for that big run. That's okay. Don't go for the big run. Do something smaller. Or, for instance, if I don't feel like I can go for that big run because of time or whatever it might be, I will then go and do yoga, or I'll go for a swim. It's still being continuous and consistent with what you want to achieve, but it's just being able to pivot and change it to manage your busy day, because things will change. Things are going to change every single day, aren't they? So it's a 3-in-1. So ultimately, you would look at, you've got yourself, you have your professional life and your work, and then you've got your life and your house admin. And all those things are big, but it's writing them all down about the bigger picture. So you'll look at what you want to achieve for yourself. You're working on your marathon, aren't you? You're working on your mindset, you're working on your wellness and getting through the grief. And there are lots of different things there. And then you've got your family, and your home life, and all of those different things that you need to be responsible for. But it's learning you can't be responsible for everything. You can't. And obviously then you've got your work and your professional life. And so writing all those things down and being reflective on what the big goals are. And then every day, as I said to you before, look at the bigger pictures and then take one from each of those 3 and then focus on that for the day, because that's your 3-in-1 day. And they're small. And it's so much easier, but because then you'll have, what strategies do you use to keep your family organized? What do you have? Do you have any visual strategies? What do you do to keep you in a good space?
We actually, randomly enough, we have a whiteboard, a magnetic one that's on our fridge, and it has Monday to Friday down there, and it says, right, who is doing what on a Monday to Friday, and then at the moment, sort of like Saturday, Sunday. Clearly, at the moment, it's rugby season, which we're slowly coming to the end, so I might get a life back on a Sunday. And then to make sure that we are fully nourished, I do plan our meals for the week. There's a number of reasons why I do that. And that's one, because we are so busy. So you go, right, what can I prepare at the weekend? So an hour and a half, just chopping up sort of like veg, putting a slow cooker can really, really save time. Equally, I did it because there's no food waste. A lot of
Yeah.
people will go so more environmentally friendly, and I do advocate that some of my clients, when we start looking at their food diaries, is, well, one, what can we tweak to give them what their goal is, but equally just highlighting, well, actually, if you are time constrained, let's plan some what makes it nutritionally beneficial to you. And by the way, you get the added bonus of there's no food waste and you probably save money because, again, you go into any of the supermarkets that you shop at, and you could be drawn into sort of like an offer and you've brought it, and then a week later you go, I haven't used it, and it's in the bin.
Yeah.
So, and that's probably my main strategy, is my one and only non-negotiable, unless it's a random one-off, is that on a Friday is the only day that none of the children do any clubs. My husband and I have both trained very early in the morning, and therefore we have our family connection meal then, because at the moment it could be on a Saturday or a Sunday that one of them's at camp or something else or away, and you just go, okay, fine, let's just kind of juggle. So we try to see what we're doing within the diary. And obviously, as my children get older, they will have access to the family calendar. But we also have a calendar that has 4 columns, or
Yeah.
actually 5, one for each of us, and then what we're doing jointly.
Yeah, and I think that's exceptionally easy and simple for you to have, because it's that visual, isn't it? It's that visual. And when I was married and there was 4 of us in the house plus a dog, that really helped me. I was, really, really structured, really, really structured. I still am. Obviously, my life's changed. There's less of us in my family unit, and so I use the same approach, but it's not as many people to juggle. So I had exactly the same, and I'd have it all colour coordinated because it had to be like that. And I like you do like Family Friday. I think that's lovely, having that time to stop and disconnect from your tech and be together and have that catch up, because that's really essential. It's so essential to have that time. And going back to your expertise, where it's the health and nutrition, that ultimately is the key. As you know, health is your wealth, 100%. And I love that you said it's a non-negotiable, because it isn't. There was absolutely no way that anyone can progress or fulfill their full potential if they're not looking at themselves as health as their main priority. It's your most important asset. It's your most important currency, because without health, you cannot do any of those other things you just described. You can't go to work. You can't coach anybody else. If you've got to have time. And when we talk about health, we need to break the stigma of the different aspects, because there is mental health. Can't break away from it. Ultimately, your mental capacity, the largest muscle in our bodies, needs to have the downtime, just like the rest of our body does. So regulating and learning, as I said before, the meditation, the breath work, the time to create time to have no noise, learning to have putting those 10 minutes aside for yourself is really key. So these healthy habits are, as I said before, an holistic approach. You can't look at yourself as just one aspect. It's a whole different type. So 7 areas of wellness. You can't just go, oh, actually, I'm going to just look at myself and just focus on the food aspect. It's got to be your mind, the spiritualism, because there is that aspect to it. It's the physical. There's so many different ways that we have to be mindful for us to actually reach our full potential. So you'll have to teach me more with regards to the nutrition aspect. So I have studied, as you have, but this obviously is your expertise, and it'd be really nice to share and connect. And I think that's really important, because then everyone's got a lot of value.
I think just on that is, I'm not saying, and I would never say to anybody, don't have your cake and eat it. It's the 80-20 rule. 80% of the time,
Yeah.
where what I'm hearing and reflecting back to you is that actually you're going, Michelle, the breath work and your mental work is a non-negotiable. That has to be consistent every single day. And
Yeah.
yeah, we all start it, and I put my hands up. Okay, I know how to do it. And yes, it's one of my recommendations, but you've actually
Mm.
got me thinking, I do need to walk away from the
Mm.
laptop. I do need to just go and sit in the bedroom and do that breath work. And that is a non-negotiable because it can be done anywhere.
Yeah.
Where when we look at nutrition, is each of us are unique, each of our gut biome is unique. There are things that will work for some that won't work for others. There is always improvements that we can make. And one of the things that I tend to find, and you might have found in your own clients, is the stress levels, but then they become very dependent on sugar. And that's where my 12 week coaching program becomes difficult for some of my clients, because what we're trying to do is break that reliance on that sugar so that your body can actually fully recover and utilize those bodily processes. And that's one of the hardest things to do. But equally, I go, yeah, okay, if you're out and about and it's a mindful moment and you see a cake or a scone and you just quickly take that breath work and go, is it something that I really want? And when I say this, it's two ways of looking at it. It's if you've been out in, trekking in heat and the jungle or something, and you've hardly had anything to eat or water, you get to where you need to be, right? And it's like taking that first sip of wine or the first bite of your favorite meal, and you feel like it's all your Christmases have come at once. It's really
Yeah.
going, yes, that is so worth it.
Mm.
And so, if you are out and about and, I love ice cream, and you're just like having ice cream after ice cream because that's it, it does you no harm. If you're continually, though, having the ultra processed foods, that's when we start to go, that's when you're going to have the impact.
I love that you mentioned ultra processed food, because this is the conversations I've been having with my friends and my clients. And it's a new journey for me, because I come from a family where we didn't have very much as children. So we didn't have the education side of food and nutrition, and the financial stability. We didn't have that. So I was brought up on a lot of white bread, pasta, that type of thing. And it's now the case where I continuously are learning. I'm learning to treat my body much better and look at myself as, um, what fuel is going in. Like you said,
Mm.
I 100% love the 80/20. And I think you have to be kind to yourself. There is so much out there. It's very difficult to completely say, I'm never going to have anything that I really want to eat ever again. That's not healthy, is it? You need to say to yourself, do you know what? I love eating crisps. I love eating crisps. I also like feeling well. So, for instance, I will say to myself, well, actually, I really want that. I never stop myself from having something I want. If I think to myself, I really want to eat that, I'm going to go and have it. But then I'll say to myself, well, that's okay, you enjoyed it, but equally, I'm going to then therefore go and swim a little bit further, or I'm going to go and run a little bit farther, or I'm going to for the rest of the day make sure that I eat much healthier. It's not food shaming yourself. It's not food, you essentially have to accept the fact that you need to have some of those things. We need to have fats. We do need to have them, but sugar obviously is a big one. I need it to become a non-negotiable. And I think that a lot of education is needed here, because you probably know this, and I'm sure you do. It's hit 1 billion people in this world are now obese, which is mind blowing. And the fact that that is happening is due to the fact of as you know, the ultra processed foods. And this is just one element of the healthy habits, isn't it? So it's a whole aspect of, it's re-education. It ultimately is re-education. It's training ourselves. It's training clients to knowing the facts, accepting they know the information, and then what they're going to do with it. Because if you know it, then therefore, once you've potentially broken that non-negotiable, you'll say to yourself, well, actually, do you know, I did do that. That's okay. I'm not going to be hard on myself. I'll be kind to myself. But tomorrow, I'm going to go again. Because you have to keep going, don't you? You have to keep saying, well, you know,
It's consistency, as we've said. So, and I think the whole, like, we go back to the symptoms, if you could summarize the symptoms of burnout that you've seen. But then, to me, it's, you've got to make that decision of what's your non-negotiables, what's your priority. Is it yourself, first of all, should be number one, then what comes next? You know, what's your purpose? But really then deciding, well, if you're going to do this and you want the longer term fix, I've always said it's a lifestyle change. It's not a quick fix. It's not a diet. And I think, I don't know, but like, certainly burnout, as you say, because it's this lifestyle textbook life that we're all supposed to be leading. We're supposed to be doing this, and you're supposed to be this type of mom, and you're not allowed to shout at your kids, and you're not allowed to swear, and you're like, they're really frustrating, and it gets all too much. And so, to me, I just go, that to me is probably signs of burnout, not just for myself, but for every single person. And one question I kind of like go is, have you found it's more prevalent in women? Because I've certainly, a lot of my coaching clients are menopausal women that have spent their whole entire life, you know, dedicated to a family, and now left with this open space of, oh my God, what am I going to do? Rather than it is men. The men that I coach is more around, right, I'm going to run a marathon, or I'm going to do a triathlon. So what do I need to do? Fueling, as in pre, post, during and post. And I'm like, yeah, okay, we can have a look at all of that.
yeah, because that's your expertise and that's your strength, isn't it? It's definitely more women. Women are struggling more so. And the reason is because we cannot cope with lack of sleep. The stats are higher for us because we can't deal with the sleep deprivation. It impacts on us. It will release. We start releasing stress hormones, cortisol, which then affects, you know, our internal. Then low mood kicks in, and it's. Do you know what? I'm thinking to myself whilst I'm talking to you. These chats that we're having and the podcast, there's so many different aspects to what we should be discussing, and we could probably have about 12 different podcasts from this, because
Come back.
there's so many different aspects to this, because like you said, there's the social media. I was never going to be that mum who's the banana muffin baking person. That was never going to be me. I was never that person. But equally, was I a good mum? Am I a good mum? I am. The reason why mums, you know, women are struggling is because of the pressure of having to be this perfect, idolized person, the look, you know, looking after yourself, looking after your children, looking after your husband, all those different, you know, your house. This is too much for people to be able to manage. So again, what I suggest is teaching people to remind themselves, you are beginning. You are the beginning and the end. You have to prioritize yourself and look at why you are feeling like this, because there is a reason for everything, isn't there? It's ultimately a reason. Everyone's got different lifestyles. Everyone's got different challenges happening to them, or, you know, with yours, with the grieving. There's so many different challenges for so many different people. And I can coach people who have got, on paper, you know, textbook, they're millionaires, big houses, you know, got all the cars. And then I've got other people that are working towards that, or, you know, have financial difficulties, that type of thing. And it just goes to show that when you're looking at this social media perfection, it doesn't matter what you have got with regards to financial status. As I said again, health is your wealth. It can affect burnout, can affect absolutely anybody. And it does, and it is, and it ultimately is. But as I said to you, it is women that are struggling more so. But I think it's important to say here that we need to be mindful of that. the men, their stats of their mental health, this is another discussion, but suicide rates, and we should say this word because it happens. Suicide rates for men are so high. Suicide rates this year or from last year are so much higher because of burnout, because of the overwhelming challenges. So we really, really do need to make more of an effort with regards to how we're reaching out to these leaders, within, government, that type of thing, to help support breaking down these self-limiting beliefs, to support people to break burnout, because ultimately there isn't the services out there, and people don't know that you and I are around. There's lots of coaches and lifestyle coaches around, but people don't know where to access them. So doing podcasts like we're doing now, and obviously, trying to reach out, is so important, isn't it? To be able to say to people, we're not here to preach. I'm not here to preach to anybody. Ultimately, what I'm saying to you is, I've overcome so many different obstacles. I've had those feelings, the symptoms that you said earlier, the feelings of fatigue, the feeling of I'm very lucky where as I said to you before, my mind is strong, where I can train myself to say, I can feel myself not feeling particularly well. Again, dental health is not spoken about. Dental health is a huge thing. I had those moments where there was, dental health was happening, lots of different strands to my health was breaking down. And I was stopped and thought, hang on a second, what is it that is ultimately causing me the stress to have those feelings, for my body to be reacting in that way? So ultimately, it was looking at what you can do to stop and change and rearrange so that you can make yourself more of a priority. You have to make that space. You have to. As we said earlier, they are non-negotiables. You have to make that space to disconnect. I do. After I speak to you, my phone goes away. I put everything away. My watch goes, I put everything away, and therefore I'm not accessible, because why should I be accessible all day and all night? I don't need to be. Do you feel like that sometimes, that you're constantly on alert, that you're constantly being there for someone?
I think just trying to wrap up what we've been talking about is your final point about connecting, and that's connecting with yourself, but also through, as you say, life coaches like ourselves, having this podcast, getting the word out there, is that connection to community. Because I know that certainly from my experiences, is sometimes you feel so alone, and that is probably predominantly a sign of burnout. So if we went, okay, what is the sort of 3 major signs of burnout? Okay, you feel alone,
Yeah,
you're fatigued,
yeah.
okay, and you just feel so
Low mood.
self-loathing, no good. And I would say that's the 3 signs of burnout, and it can, as you say, it can happen to any of us.
Absolutely.
What we then say is, okay, so how would we then break that down? Well, one, to recognize those symptoms. And then what's the priority? Is it trying to find your purpose, or is it, let's just start off with you? Because as you've just beautifully articulated, you are the beginning and the end. And so, like, one of the strategies you said is breath work, journaling morning and night. I would probably add in there some nutrition, and then I would add in exercise. And as you say, that exercise doesn't have to be just because I'm a runner. Running's good. At the weekend, I'm hoping to swim in the sea in Bognor Regis.
Wonderful. Cold, but yeah.
Cold. And then I think just educating people, perhaps not to be afraid for you to speak out about your feelings and sit with them, but equally for people to say that it's okay to talk about your feelings and not bottle them up, where certainly from my childhood it was like, you are seen and not heard, you don't question anything.
Yeah.
I think is that kind of like the approach that you would recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've hit the nail on the head there. There are many symptoms to burnout, and from the recent burnout report, which you can access online, it ultimately reminds people, and the findings from it, that many people do feel disconnected. They do feel disconnected. It is related to work as well, mainly. It is mainly linked to work where they feel stressed at work. There's aspects of bullying, intimidation. There are people in positions, and I know of that. I've seen that. I've been around those unfortunate aspects of leadership. So there are people in positions whom need it the most, who need to be communicated with and trained and supported to recognizing those forms of burnout, knowing that it's happening. It's accepting your pain point, isn't it? It's accepting your pain point, knowing you say to yourself, okay, I know this is happening to me. I accept it's happening to me. What am I now going to do about it? Like you said, reaching out and knowing you can say to people that actually it's okay to say I'm overwhelmed. You know, we've just come out of this hustle culture. This is why we're in burnout, because it was, trendy to how busy are you? Who's the busiest? Oh, my life's so busy. I've been doing this and that. It's not cool. It's not cool to burn out. It isn't. It's never going to be a fashionable thing. It's never fashionable to say, I actually can't move because I'm beside myself with fatigue and my mind is shot to bits. It's not ever going to be okay. This isn't okay. It's now learning to, as you said, to wrapping this up, to one, accepting the fact that we know we've got those pain points, understanding what burnout essentially is, and then, as you said, connecting, that consistently connection, of communicating that this is what's happening. And then, as you said, the start and the end is always going to be you. And it's looking at yourself and saying, right, how am I going to make this better? And you will always feel better, as you quite rightly said, you will always feel so much better when you move, when you're active. It is ultimately, there's so many different conversations here, but it is obviously the food aspect, what energy you're putting into your body, how much you're drinking. If you're 2% down in hydration, you've got brain fog going on. And also, I start slurring. If I don't have enough water, I start to slur. I can't concentrate. My focus is gone. I have to hydrate myself all day. And so it's just, again, knowing that, is it just because you're not hydrated? People are self-diagnosing themselves with anxiety when actually I just need to have a glass of water.
Yeah.
Or go for a walk, get outside in nature. It's so you ultimately, these are simple steps that we all need to do. So, disconnecting from tech is key. Drinking water, eating well, moving, making space for yourself every single day. And when people say to me, I can't, you can. You absolutely can. You can find half an hour, even if it's indoors, to do some indoor workout. It could be a Joe Wicks, it could be a yoga session. You can get some weights, use baked bean cans with some weight training. You can, because what's the other option? That you're going to sit still and scroll and make yourself feel ill and worse, and you're comparing yourself to other people, because comparison is the thief of joy. Or ultimately, are you going to think to yourself, do you know what? I really matter. I'm really important. I'm the most important person here. I'm going to get up and make a difference and make myself feel better. They're the options, really, aren't they? Do I want to sit there and eat crisps on the sofa? Yeah, I do. But equally, do that after you've done those other things to self-prioritize. And that's really important, isn't it?
So, to looking at the bigger picture, what would be your vision? Looking at the grand picture, we've talked about individuals recognizing that they may be burnout, sort of some self strategies they can do, and obviously connection and looking at different ways that they can get that support. But from a sort of like, what's your world vision? Okay, have you thought about what the world vision is with this whole entire burnout supporting people?
What I'd like to achieve. Oh, absolutely. I've got a huge picture in my head. And it is, again, there's many aspects to my progress, is a lot of self-belief. You have to be your own cheerleader. You have to, when you've got your purpose and your passion and your goal, you've got to be so determined and dedicated to that one process, that one goal, that you're not going to stop until you've achieved it. So, in answer to your question, mine is in relation to wellness programs. It's not just about the fact I want to be financially and time free. That's my second motivator. I am a single working parent. I have to put dinner on my plate and my child's plate. I have to. My first motivator will always be my purpose and my passion to make a difference. I want to, I know how to. I've got a lot of experience, I've got a lot of value. I have the authority of being, a teacher, an author, as we were saying, a wellbeing lead, all those things are, rather than me sitting here blowing my own trumpet, I have that experience. And I think experience is key. You can have the theory and the practice, and they complement each other. It's very different to having just a theory. If you've practiced it and you have that experience behind you, ultimately you can have more value, aren't you? Because people will say, well, crikey, you've been through that. I can understand and see that I can relate to that person. It's been relatable, isn't it? So ultimately, my goal is to ensure that I reach out to as many people as I can to support them to, one, identify they've got burnout. Two, to learn that there are people around to communicate with and connect with, and to show them how to have a consistent approach to being healthier, to adapting their lifestyle, to having a healthier habits, because it can be done. I do it, you're doing it. It can be done, but it's understanding and appreciating that this isn't a one quick fix. It's not like booking a holiday and saying, right, I'm going to go and spend 2 to 3 grand on a holiday, have that main goal. And when you get to that holiday, 9 times out of 10, you don't enjoy yourself because the children have driven you mad. When actually, what's a better scenario here? Is it that you need to make sure that you are the one you invest in? Of course it is. I had to spend a few £1,000s myself to become a coach. It's almost like having some therapy. And again, I think it's really essential to say that you are willing to invest in yourself, because you put that few £1,000s down once, you ultimately can have the skills and the techniques and the tools to therefore enjoy not just the lead up to the holiday, you're going to enjoy the rest of your life, because ultimately you've got the skills and the techniques to be able to breathe, process, enjoy life, rather than that goal to, oh, we're going to get to August for the holiday. Well, no, you won't, because by the time you've got to August, you're so burnt out you can't go. So it's ultimately really readjusting your mindset to being able to appreciate and understand and accept that you have to have that self-development. You have to have that priority of yourself. It's essential to continuously work on your own goals to be able to know where you're getting to, that end goal. Like yourself, you were talking about with your running and what have you, it is that start and getting to the end. How are you going to get to that destination?
Is there anything that that's sort of sitting in your stomach, in your heart, that you would like to share with us all just before we wrap up? This has been such a wonderful conversation and very informative.
It's just a really good question. There is so much that I'd like to, share with people. There is an awful lot. I think the most important part of my journey to support people is, telling people that it's not that I'm here to be, you're telling people how to do something. I am essentially a guide. I'm a navigator. I don't know everything. Of course I don't. I can't possibly know that. But I do know how to guide and drive people back to their pathway of how to be the best they can be. And ultimately, it's a working partnership, and it's a collaboration of, it's not therapy. I'm not a therapist. I'm never going to go down that route because that's not the deep trauma I need to connect with. But it's knowing that I'm going to show them that you can accept your pain points. You can accept that those traumas happened to you as a child, because everything we do is ultimately reactive from a trauma. Everything. I've taught myself to be able to, as I said, breathe. Do I need to react to that? No, because the only reason I'm reacting to that is because I had pain and trauma from my own childhood. So it's learning and accepting that actually sometimes all you need to do is breathe, smile, and wave and walk away from it. And that's ultimately it. I've really enjoyed this. I've really enjoyed this. It's been wonderful.
Thank you. So, as always, my friends that are listening to the podcast, I hope you have found this episode to be insightful. If you have not already done so, please like this show, share, and leave us a review to help us grow this podcast and support my quest to support as many of you around the globe to elevate your health and well-being from the inside and out.